right. Live. Another Wholesale Wednesday.
I feel like this is a repeat of when it was now, maybe a couple of months ago when we were dealing with all those first initial Nike regatings. That's been everywhere, all over Twitter. And it's not only Nike, it's like all the larger brands. And today is November 20th. So not an ideal time if you're an OA seller.
Yeah. Like Amazon always throws the curveballs at the 11th hour. It's like, here we are in Q4. They're coming for you.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, if it's your entire business model, it's like that's another element of it where, maybe not putting all your eggs in one basket, because at the end of the day, I mean, Amazon, you're at the mercy of their everything if you're selling on their platform. So we try and play it as safe as possible. And even that is, an unsure thing at the end of the day. Nothing's 100%.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, how many, we're doing brand direct wholesale, right? We're buying directly from brands to mitigate that risk, to mitigate the risk of IP claims. But doesn't mean we don't receive restricted product violations. Doesn't mean we're not going through our inventory and cross-referencing it to Amazon's restricted policy. I mean, we just had one product this week that we had to get rid of because of that,
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It makes me think back to like when I was starting and when I was doing arbitrage and everything. Back then, I don't know. I didn't really think of the risk so much associated with it. Was your mind like at the very beginning really on? I didn't even know what a restricted product violation was.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no, it wasn't, and I think that is exactly the case for a lot of beginners. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because you don't have anything in the beginning, right? You're focused on just achieving something when you're just starting out. Whereas once you've built up, a 6 or 7 or 8 figure business, you're now shifting your perspective of putting everything under scrutiny, and making sure that everything that you've built up to this point is not put at risk because of one bad decision. And, just because we sell on Amazon, that's kind of the mindset that we have to operate in is continuously stay compliant with Amazon. And anybody just joining us here, welcome. We go live every Wednesday, 7:00. Glad to have you guys in. If you have questions, drop them here in the chat. We'll answer them as they come in.
Yeah, I was going to say, we already got a bunch of questions here coming in. First one says, how do you guys get a list of, I wish this was true. I wish it was this many, but it's how do you guys get a list of hundreds of suppliers to contact each and every day? I wish we could figure out a way to contact hundreds of suppliers every day. It's not quite that many. I mean, Brad, what are we talking? Like, what's a good week of contacting?
I mean, at this point in the game, probably 50? We're looking at 50 suppliers we're contacting, and those are high, caliber. Like, we're focused on quality of who we're reaching out to rather than quantity. But when you're a beginner, just starting, I've always said focus on the quantity, just so you can get product in your inventory, get the reps in, understand how to make the calls and the outreach, because that's going to propel you forward a lot faster.
Yeah, because we talk about there's like an inverse relationship between like skill set and how many companies you're contacting. So like the lower your skill set, the less accounts you're probably going to close, the more you're going to have to contact to make up for that. But it's just all about getting profitable products in the inventory. But I mean, relating back to the questions is like, how do you guys get a list of suppliers? I mean, it basically is through two methods. We storefront stock, and then we use Smart Scout to source for our products. And I believe there's full videos on both of those individually on the YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, there are. We could link them here in the chat.
But why don't we do that?
One thing is, you don't need Smart Scout it's a nice tool to streamline the process, because what it does is it instead of reverse category sourcing on Amazon, where you're going into a category, say, you're going in health and household, and then you look at the sidebar, and then you niche down into a subcategory and another subcategory. Smart Scout cuts out that initial, bombarding. Amazon's all over the listings. Those big name brands allows you to niche down quicker. But I mean, for years we were never using Smart Scout, and finding very profitable brands. So.
Yeah, exactly. And we could, why don't you link both of those in the chat there just so they have them. I'll just get on to the next questions here. It says, right when I call a brand, what should I say? And like, this is a common question that we get all the time. And really at the end of the day, your most profitable account ever versus the account that you don't get, the conversation starts exactly the same. And it's, you pick up the phone, you introduce yourself, you explain what you are, you prove some legitimacy by providing a location. You say that, you stock and ship products, or an e-commerce seller, and tell me a little bit more about your business, right? And then that's the easy part. The hard part is then playing off of their emotions and having the emotional intelligence from doing hundreds and hundreds of calls to be able to respond to what they say next, because chances are it's probably going to be an objection or something relating to, like, we don't accept Amazon sellers. So every call just starts out exactly that way. That's exactly how we make calls. And that's pretty much it. That's like the template that you have. Same thing goes for an email, please send over a price list type of deal. Be direct. You don't want to be too salesy. But then your sales, quote unquote, comes from responding to their usual rejection, essentially.
Exactly. I'm just grabbing this other video here.
Yeah, no problem. Next question here says, do you buy inventory for more than 30 to 45 days supply? Well, generally speaking, for those that don't know, the reason that 30 to 45 day supply is kind of a sweet spot is because it solves two things. It solves the newly introduced low inventory fee, which if you guys have dealt with that, it can be really, really detrimental to your profit on a SKU. And it also is good for a cash flow benefit, from a perspective of cycling cash flow in and out of the business. And then actually the third thing that I said two, but realistically three, is that it actually keeps you in constant communication with your supplier. So for those three reasons, we like to keep a 30 to 45 day supply worth of inventory. And if there's a better reason, like maybe we're pursuing an exclusive or something, and we have to stock a ton of inventory or something like that, then we'll do that, to get through a transitional period or something like that. But generally speaking, day-to-day products, 30 to 45 days is what works best.
I feel like that number 3 that you mentioned is so slept on, to just have more communication and relationship building with your supplier.
Well, because it's kind of like, it's like, I don't know, let's say that there's like somebody you're interested in, and then you like don't have a reason to talk to them. So you like go out of your way to like, and it's like weird. It's like always awkward, but like if you have a reason or something in common, or like something where you can just talk to them, I feel like it makes more sense. And that's kind of how the supplier is, because it's like, oh, hey, here's another order, and it's not weird. You're not just reaching out to them by phone or email just to, with nothing to say.
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy. It makes a lot of sense. And the other thing you mentioned there, which was low inventory fees. And if anybody is looking to see what their low inventory fees are, or if they're paying low inventory fees, if you're in your Amazon selling account now, or you could just pop open your Amazon selling account, all you do is you go over to the 3 lines in the upper left-hand corner, and you go to inventory, and then you click on FBA inventory. And then from there, that'll bring you to a page that populates all the SKUs that you have available. And then there will be a header. It looks like I think it's the 4th header over, that says low inventory level fee. And then you're going to want to sort that. Actually, if you click on that header, you're going to want to sort that from greatest to, or rather least to greatest in terms of stock availability. And then you're going to see what you're paying in low inventory fees. And if you're below the 28-day average of stock availability, you're paying some sort of low inventory fee, unless the product is exempted.
Right. Or you can go into your inventory and click on the SKU below it, and then it has your rolling 30-day
Is there a way?
with low inventory at the bottom. Or
There's a
you can
way.
do all that. I don't know.
Is there
That's
a
how
way,
to get to
is there
the
a way to get it?
yeah. That's I mean, you get to the dashboard like what you said. I do it that way too, but you can actually it'll give you your low inventory fee in the if you click on the SKU and you're looking at SKU economics, it will give you under the 30-day thing on a particular SKU if there's the fee or not. And if it's not there, it means you're not paying a fee. But what you're saying is ideal for like preventing it. But like if you're already selling things and you think you might be paying a fee, that's how you can check as well.
Okay, so you're talking about right on the SKU economics where you can see the
Yeah.
actual fee.
We're just learning. We're learning from each other. Yeah.
On the SKU economics, you can see actually what you're paying in fees.
Yeah.
Right. But in terms of preemptively
Yes.
solving the issue, if somebody,
Yeah.
if you're looking at the SKU, you're like, I want to restock to avoid the fee.
Right.
Here's how much, it gives you that 28-day supply. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, preemptively, exactly. Yeah, I throw that out there. But all right, so next question here says, can you help providing suppliers that can help you ungate products on Amazon? I know a couple off the top of my head. You want to rip a couple distributors for like category ungatings?
I mean, one that comes to mind is like EE distribution for toys. You can get invoices from them, for any kind of toy products and really easily get ungated. That's the first one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. I've heard people having some luck with Target too, actually. I've heard some people having some luck with Target. What's that? There's a big grocery one, and I can't remember what it is. I haven't.
Sure.
It's been so that's the thing. Like we're so far removed from that, just on the basis of everything that we do is authorized by the brand, and we don't really have to get ungated, which is also another big benefit to doing brand direct wholesale because you don't have to deal with that. You don't. We actually got a DM from a friend of ours in the space today that was like, "Hey, did this affect you guys at all with all the closings of the brands?" And I was like, "Nope, not at all." And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't think so." So. You don't have to really do that on gating type stuff, but I would actually recommend checking out Flips for Miles has a ungating guide. I would definitely look on his page and check that out.
Yeah, and the other thing is about just the whole concept of ungating. Like if anybody's looking to get into brand direct wholesale, right? I feel like brand direct wholesale for some reason it's made out to be like it's only for the elite, it's only for people who are super skilled at Amazon. But the reality is, like, how many times have you and I sat here and said to each other, you don't need to be smart to sell on Amazon?
No. Okay. Well, that's usually after we do something stupid. And then, and then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot this is just a persistence game. You don't have to be smart.
No, it's literally persistence. I mean, you get better at the pitch as you do it more. And that's the thing is you got to fall on your face probably a few hundred times to get that pitch down. But at the end of the day, the only difference between reaching out to the brand directly and reaching out to a distributor is one, who you're buying the inventory from, and two, the orientation of the approach. So if I'm reaching out to a brand, just understanding that brand maintains a vested interest in their brand, meaning they care about their product, who's selling it, who's representing in it. So throwing, money at them is not always the answer. It's more so relationship building and providing solutions to problems that they've previously had. Whereas with a distributor, you might be able to buy your way in, even if you're not the cream of the crop Amazon expert.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Well said. It's just a different approach.
Yeah, and it's a great way you won't have to deal with these types of mass issues that we see a lot of Amazon sellers dealing with. It's like the Section 3s that come out every Q4, the ungate or the gating and restricting of products. And I mean, there's tons of them, but being able and targeting more smaller to mid-sized brands, you're still potentially realizing millions, thousands, if not millions of dollars in revenue. but
Yeah.
you're not dealing with all the massive issues that come with unauthorized buying or selling massive brands, like a Nike that
Mhm.
can just flick a button and decide what happens.
For sure. Keep jumping down into these questions here. Next one says, I only buy or source from B2B distributors because I'm kind of plays into what you're saying, actually. It says, I'm scared to do brand direct. I just feel like I don't have the capital for this, even for the small brands. I think that's, I mean, you could speak on this one, but I think that's actually kind of a misconception, what they're saying there.
I agree. I think it is. I think it's actually, this is when I first started, in wholesale, it was like, this was what everybody said, in that to buy from brands, you need like more capital. You need massive amounts of capital. But what I found, and what you found, we both found, is like, you actually need less capital to buy from brands than distributors, because distributors, you're buying your way in. It's a volume game. The more you buy, the better the pricing. With brands, we have, worked with some of our exclusive agreements had no MOQs,
Yeah.
no minimum order quantities. So it's like, with brands, you really don't need any more capital than you would with distributors.
Yeah. I always say, like, and, of course, like, I think you're a little bit better at this than I am, where you're like, when to put the money up. I like to wait until the absolute like, that's my last resort, is like, I'm not paying a dime until I absolutely have to. Sometimes I'll even provide value before I make a purchase, but then, like, it adds legitimacy, obviously, once you start putting money in their pocket and stuff. But yeah, money is it's way heavier in distributors, I think,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Next question in here says, I'm a new seller and I have to ungate products in order to sell them. Most suppliers do not guarantee if their invoices will work to ungate products. Do I need to take a risk with that? I have a lot of other questions. I mean, I think that we talk about supplier legitimacy a lot, um,
Yeah, I was just reading the question there. Yeah, I mean, no, I would definitely get that invoice. Like, if you have an invoice is pretty standard. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I don't, not the supplier won't always guarantee that Amazon's going to ungate you in the invoice. So if it were me, and the way I would approach it is, I wouldn't expect expect a guarantee of being ungated on Amazon by the supplier, but I would make sure that the components that Amazon's going to look for on that invoice are
right.
there before you make the buy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, why I had kind of skepticism on that was because I wasn't sure if it was the supplier not providing the requirements that Amazon wants for the invoice, or it wasn't them just guaranteeing it. I don't think anyone's going to really guarantee you're going to get ungated or not. But as long as, like Brad said, you're matching up what Amazon requires versus what's on the invoice, and it's all pretty standard. So unless they have something weird going on with their invoicing, but like, we always hear about, like, the inability or lack of communication around a supplier agreeing to provide you with an invoice. That's a different story.
Yeah.
All right, next question here says, how do I know the difference between a no? Oh, there we go. That sounds like there's a punctuation in it. I like couldn't, my brain wasn't braining. How do I know the difference between a no that a brand gives me, that I should stay away from, and a no that they give me that I should convince or turn that into a yes? Can you give me examples? This is an awesome question.
That's a great question.
It's a really good question. Let's just not answer it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, it's
So,
a phenomenal question, Terry. It
yeah.
really is. Did you want to start that out?
I mean, everything's just based on tonality, and so it starts with being on the phone, because if we can't have tonality in the conversation, then I mean, you actually, that was literally a perfect example of it. While I was reading it, I couldn't decipher like the word no and what context it was in. So like it literally case in point right there. Like if you see something in text or an email, like you're not really going to be able to understand it as much versus if you hear it on the phone. I think that there's a big difference between what a no sounds like that it's you should stay away from and what a no sounds like that you can convince into a yes. So I don't know if you want to go off of that.
Yeah, I mean, a no in an email, you like you said, you get no tonality. When you are on the phone, and as you do this more, you start to get an idea and a feel for that tonality. So if you say we're interested in, right, you call them up and you say we're interested in opening a wholesale account, and maybe the first thing that they ask you is where do you want to sell or what kind of business are you, and then you explain that hopefully you don't tell them you're an Amazon seller. You tell them, if you've watched, our content and our videos, you tell them that you're an e-commerce company, right? And once you get through, that first sentence or two, then they might shortcut you or they might let you finish and then just say, oh, we're not working with Amazon sellers, right? And that statement right there is sort of the tonality of that statement is how and where the direction of the call is going to be, right? Because if it's just a completely flat, we are only taking licensed physicians or only brick and mortar stores, right? In the industry specific, it's like
some of them are so specific too, where it's like,
yeah.
I'm like, does that even exist?
Do you have an aquatic? Do you have an aquatics like something or other like staff?
It's like I'm like, did you just make that up while we were on the phone?
Yeah, exactly right. And as you do this over and over again, it's just not worth your time to pursue those guys. But and then there's the accounts on the other end of the spectrum where it's like, yeah, sure, we sell to anyone, and then you take the account, right, and maybe it's profitable and you place a buy, nothing wrong with that. But then don't forget about them, because then you could potentially go back to them later on once you've built a relationship, and then either pitch them on going semi-exclusive or exclusive. And then the guys, on the initial call in the middle, right, where their tonality is like, we're not really interested in, we're not taking on sellers. And you could just tell by their tonality, it's sort of undecided or they don't know the direction they're headed in.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a question on Instagram here.
Claudius says, thanks for doing the live. No problem.
Yeah, for sure. We do have a question here on Instagram. Actually, it looks like, are distributors authorized to be Amazon sellers too, meaning they can confirm the worth of a product and upcharge you based on that knowledge?
See if I understand the question. So are when we say distributors, we're talking about like a distributor that you or I would buy from type of deal?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So can they sell themselves on Amazon? Is that?
Yeah, so I think they're asking if distributors are authorized to be Amazon sellers too, which I would say in most cases they are, and meaning they can confirm the worth of a product and upcharge you based on that knowledge. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that question is sort of headed in the direction of, can a distributor, outbid you on price basically and be more competitive with you on price because they're getting it at a better cost than you are? Are they going to go and turn around and sell it on Amazon and undercut your retail price?
Well, I mean, we see this more so in the case with the largest distributor, which is Amazon themselves, right? Like we see that all the time where Amazon will be on a listing, and some listings will be competitive and they will undercut you to the ground, and some they won't. And I think that's really contingent on like, what they're getting the price of the product at. And same thing. I mean, there's listings where the brand themselves will sell on the listing, and they'll accept any and every Amazon seller. They say, no problem, open the floodgates, but it's because they're selling the product to you at the same price that they're selling it at on Amazon themselves. So it's just kind of like a hypothetical question. Like, yes, of course, a distributor or anyone can sell the product, But I think the more important thing to look into is a case-by-case scenario to say, on the product that I am selling on, is that distributor going to be competitive with me? And if they're not, then they're just kind of another Amazon seller.
Right. Yep, exactly.
What's the estimate for shipping per pound? Because we got a question here. It says, do you include shipping costs per pound before buying a product?
Yeah, so generally, we'll estimate it conservatively at about 50 cents per pound. It's a conservative estimate. So I would just go off of that and set your revenue calculators, or, whatever calculator you're using, at 50 cents per pound. And chances are, a lot of times we'll send the actual shipment into Amazon, and it will beat that rate many times.
Yeah. That's also not including inbound placement. So if you've already shipped the product in once or twice and if it goes optimized or minimal or partial or whatever, then put that. But if you've never done it, again, like Brad said, going conservative and just putting, like if you're on the West Coast, putting West. If you're on the East Coast, putting East. If you're Central, putting Central for a minimal. That's going to be the most conservative estimate to kind of like base your profitability.
Yes. So you're saying we'll set if we're looking to make an investment in a product, we're making a prediction and estimating the profitability. We've never bought the product before. It's our first buy. We will set the revenue calculator that it's going to our regional FC. So we're on the East Coast. We'll set it so that it's going to the East Coast FC at the minimal split level, meaning it's going to one location. So we're paying the highest fee, and we'll add in 50 cents per pound shipping cost.
Right.
Yeah. And that will, to go back to his question, that will, anything, once you actually do it, chances are it's going to beat that, so anything above that is going to be additional profit that you weren't predicting.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have to figure shipping coming from your supplier if they're shipping to a warehouse or a prep center as well. So there's a lot of shipping fees, and honestly, if you can get those down, we've really dove into the minimal, partial, it's on a very granular level, and a lot of times it has to do with just the size, the weight of the product, and the quantity that you're sending. So reducing your shipping costs, especially in a game like Wholesale that's very volume heavy, you can save a ton of money just by improving your shipping costs.
Definitely.
Question in here says, what software do you use for replenishment with the stock of suppliers?
We do it manually. We cost it.
Everyone just had a heart attack.
What's that?
Everyone just we say that and people are like, what?
Yeah, just manually replenishing 200 SKUs. It's really not that bad. It takes us about 2-3 hours a week. It's really not that bad. We experimented with a software called SoStocked, but we found that it's very difficult to put a blanket one-size-fits-all rule on products that each have their own trends and nature, right? It's easier to do when you're exclusive on a product. You're the only seller on the listing. You're going to sell X amount of units per month. You can set a rule. You can reorder every month, right? But when you're competing with multiple sellers, or you have a seasonal product, right, it becomes difficult to do that. So that's why we just choose to do it manually. And like I said, it takes about 2-3 hours a week for maybe 200 to 250 SKUs. That's.
And just to clarify, manually means through Seller Central, using the data of how much has been sold, how much is in stock, how much is in transit, and putting all those factors together to then create a PO to send to the company. So that's what manually means. We're not drawing marks on the wall with.
We're writing our POs in chalk.
Doing a hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
Like PO numbers. All right, awesome. So there's a lot of good questions. Keep them coming. It says when Finding a brand at a small trade show not on Amazon yet, how to evaluate if there's potential on Amazon, and what would be the process of evaluating the potential. This is a good one.
Small trade show. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a good question. How many times have we just been like, like a couple of little trolls walking around at trade shows, like Googling these brands as we're walking through? I mean, a good way to save yourself some time is to go to the trade show site and look, download an exhibitor list, look at that list of exhibitors. And then if it's a massive list, I would recommend giving it to a VA to then cross-reference with Amazon and see if those brands that are going to be at the trade show have traction on Amazon. And then if you want to take it a step further and you have the time between when you're doing this and the trade show, outreach to them before the trade show via phone or email if you have to, and just say, hey, I'm going to be at the trade show. That is a point of reference for the brand. Hey, can't wait to meet you next week. You know what I mean? It gives you a point of reference. So I think that's, a great way of doing it. A lot of times we'll find out about these trade shows last minute, and we'll end up just, trolling through the trade show, Googling on Amazon, trying to hide our phone so nobody sees us, our Amazon in our browser.
And the second element to that question, because I kind of took it as like a traction thing, like as far as if a brand is not sold on Amazon yet and you might want to launch it on Amazon, like how do you know whether that's going to pay off or whether that's going to be a complete dud? And first of all, I wouldn't recommend doing that as a new seller. If you're new to wholesale and you're not experienced with all the wholesale things that almost make you kind of like private label-esque, because that's really what brand direct is. You don't understand that developing a brand yet, then I wouldn't even touch a new brand like that. But I will say that if you are thinking about doing that, make sure that the brand has traction on other platforms. We're doing that with some brands and we're launching them and we're creating them and we're running ads and we're gaining traction for them. But it's only because either one, we have a previously working relationship with them, or two, they have sales traction on other platforms that they can show us that we can then basically say like, hey, we're going to try to translate X percentage of this into Amazon.
Right. Yeah. And you'll get pitched a lot on oh, we're not going to give you our best selling product.
Yeah.
You could have this one that, like, hey, take this exclusive on Amazon. And like, the reality is if we took all those opportunities, we might be out of business. It's like, that's brands just want to push their products. They want all their SKUs to sell. But the reality is it's like the 80-20 rule, 80% of your revenue is made up by 20% of your SKUs. And that just is the case with many brands too. So don't be sold into, doing all of the work for them to launch a new brand, a brand that doesn't exist on Amazon, has no traction, like Brandon said, because you're going to get, have a tough time with that.
It says in here, do you recommend buying different products or the same product to reach the minimum order price MOQ for the supplier? Assuming this is something with like different SKUs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's 100% driven by the volume of the products. It's
buy what sells.
Yeah. That's what we've always said, right? We try to articulate that to brand owners. Some brand owners that we work with are very volume driven. We've had battles with them to try to help them understand that, your product is not worth millions. It's worth what it sells, But yeah,
well, that's always a point of contention, because we talk about like having equity in your brand. No one has more equity in it than the brand owner themselves. So even though you think you're trying to provide them with value, they think that their brand is so valuable in a lot of cases that like it's almost irrational. And sometimes it's like a pride thing, and it makes sense, but sometimes you kind of gotta like rein them in. We've had to do that quite a few times.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it winds up the relationship just kind of fizzles out because they can't be convinced. But a lot of times they can be, convinced otherwise.
Yeah, and Daniel, craft your PO based around the volume. So your PO is made, if it's a new order with your supplier, do a test order. Do an order that is less than the Amazon volume. Don't jump into a massive order. even though you see the product selling on Keepa, even though you see the data on there, place a small order that you're comfortable with, get the product in your inventory, sell through it, see the sales in your Amazon account, and then go back and order that, more 30 to 45 day supply. Just make sure you're buying at least enough of a quantity that you can actually get the sales data on. Like if you buy 5 units, you're not going to get an idea of what's going to sell and at what frequency.
20 to 30. 20 to 30. If you got to buy more for now, as long as it's like, if you have to think twice about the quantity you're buying, then think twice about it. Sometimes it just, if you can get away with buying a smaller quantity, smaller MOQ just to test it, 20, 30 units, I think that's the way to go. If you have to buy a larger amount, weigh the other aspects of the relationship to see if it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And Nick Gross is asking, what is a semi-exclusive?
It's a selective is a synonym. So it means an account that the brand is no longer taking on new Amazon sellers, but you are also not the only Amazon seller on the listing. So they might have like 2, 3, 4,
Right.
It says you guys should get in contact with you guys say you should get in contact with someone who makes a decision at the company. How do you get in contact with them? How do you know if the person you're contacting can do that? This is the same guy that asked the other question that we said was good. This is a good question too.
Yeah, Jerry's asking good questions here. So
let's just not answer that one either.
Yeah,
it's a great question, Jerry.
It's a good question here. So basically, yeah, I was just rereading it. This makes a decision. So the first thing is you want to, just take the path of least resistance and save yourself as much time as possible, which is why in the opening of the outreach, we say right after, we're interested in opening a wholesale account. Maybe we've said one sentence, hey, we're an e-commerce company, whatever. We say, am I speaking with the right person for that? After we've said we're interested in opening a wholesale account. So that's immediately getting past the BS and getting you where you need to be. And if they then bounce you to somebody in customer service and then they bounce you to somebody else, chances are you might be reaching out to a brand that's a little bit, outside of that small to medium sized scope. And you might want to retarget your sourcing to being more in the small to mid-sized range, because generally the more hoops you have to jump through in terms of speaking to a decision maker means the company is much larger, has more red tape, has more barrier to entry. Whereas, with smaller, medium-sized brands, maybe on the first, second, or third try, we're talking with an executive decision maker or even an owner.
Yep, exactly. What's the benefits of Amazon optimized shipping? Kind of a little bit granular, but Amazon optimized shipping, Amazon rolled out 3 different types of shipping methods earlier this year. I believe it was in April. And in their words, the benefit to doing that was to be able to disperse inventory closer to the customer so that it would be available for shipping for Prime 1 or 2 day, right? Or even overnight. And so what they did is they said, okay, well, if you ship to one FC now, we're going to charge you a fee. It's based on per unit, and based on the weight and dimensions of the product, it is a particular price. So let's say it's 18 cents a unit. You also have a partial shipment split, which ships to 2 to 3 fulfillment centers. And let's say that winds up being 12 cents per unit. It's a slightly less fee, but now you have to ship multiple boxes or multiple pallets. And then they have an optimized shipment split, which has to do with 5 or more of the same case or mixed SKU. And if you have all the same, they'll allow you to send it to 5 different fulfillment centers and incur no fee. So there would be no fee per unit. And it's kind of playing this balance of, do I have so many units? Because remember, it's a per unit fee. So do I have so many units that my fee per unit is going to outweigh the cost of shipping 5+ boxes? Or do I have, a mixer in between where a partial or a minimal is cheaper? Because we've seen all different sorts of combinations. Generally, an optimized shipment is most beneficial when you have a product that is light and you have a ton of them. So that might be better off going in, let's say, 5 50-pound boxes instead of, whatever it might be, or 1 50-pound box as opposed to, I'm sorry, or 10 pound boxes as opposed to like one. So depends on what the item is, but always check on the revenue calculator and you can kind of see what those fees look like. And doing a shipment in Seller Central, I believe some of these shipment creation softwares like Inventory Lab and Boxem are going to catch up eventually to having these things laid out. But right now, that's why we use Seller Central, just because you can see everything and what makes the most sense. Sorry if that was kind of a ramble, but
no, it was a good explanation. Next question here is asking about how to analyze the variations listings. So we will answer this question here, but I'm also going to link the full in-depth tutorial on how to read a Keepa chart, which goes into all the details about variation listings and all of that stuff. But in an initial sort of response here, what would you say to how to analyze variation listings and check?
I would say that you should answer this one because it says your name at the beginning.
Okay, that's a good point. So yeah,
they don't want to hear from me.
It really comes down to Keepa, and you need to look at the variations tab on Keepa, and you need to sort that tab from greatest to least in terms of ratings. Ratings is not going to correlate one-to-one with sales volume, but it is going to have a correlation with sales volume. There's a positive correlation with sales volume. As the ratings on a listing goes up, the sales volume goes up, or vice versa, right? So understanding that, looking at a listing and seeing, okay, one variation, the one pack gets 90% of the ratings, so we can safely assume that it gets about 90% of the sales. But then you're looking at the 2-pack and you're like, oh, this is super profitable, right? This is crazy profitable. This 2-pack looks great. I'm not buying the 1-pack and buy the 2-pack. I'm going to send all my units on the 2-pack, but the 2-pack's only getting, maybe 10% or 5% of the sales. So that's how you preemptively avoid, overstocking on a SKU that's not going to sell, is really being in tune with that Keepa chart and looking at the variations tab, which I've linked that full video there to, do the whole breakdown for you.
No, perfect. Well said. I always use the example of like the shoe example. I say if there's one pair that's black and another pair that's like puke green, and you're like, man, the green color is doing great. I would check the variations tab because it's like, you don't want to get stuck with the wrong product with the false assumption that it's going to sell. So,
well, you have a ton of experience doing shoes.
Yeah.
Like you haven't talked about some of those crazy stories that you have with the shoes. Might want to hold that for the next live.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin. We've had a couple of experiences that were fun.
Yeah.
But all right, and same thing. Analyze the variation listing, kind of in the same ballpark. I bet you basically answered that, right? There's the second part to that. Jerry said here, kind of a video request, making a video going through a whole process with real examples, recording yourself with brands, and said keep up the great work. So we have a lot of video ideas getting tossed around. That's been something that's been consistently asked, I believe.
Yeah, we read all of your video requests and take them into consideration. Like Brandon said, we got some video ideas in the pipeline. It's going to be super valuable for you. And I think it's a great video suggestion, and we'll look to see how we can integrate that into a video for sure. There was one question above here about what the best trade shows are for finding small to medium-sized brands. And I think just with that, just off the top of my head, Fancy Food Show is a good one. Supply Side East, Supply Side West. What's this? The other one is called Sweets and Snacks, I think.
Yeah.
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 All grocery / health and household related trade shows. Um, there's plenty of others. There was just one that just passed this month. We weren't able to attend for. It was called the International Show in the Pool and Spa Industry. Again, we're targeting an industry here, so chances are you're gonna have more luck in finding small to medium sized brands versus going to a ASD trade show, which was just massive distribution and wholesale and liquidation. Um, that's your best bet is targeting those specific categories.
Next question here says, new to wholesale after all the issues with arbitrage. What's the best filters that you guys use for Smart Scout to find brands to reach out to? I mean, we have tons of lives. I mean, you can go back and take a look at any of the lives on the YouTube channel. I don't know if you want to find one to link.
Yeah,
I
was just going to say, like, I have Smart Scout here on my screen. I can just show the filters real quick. Really all we're doing here, right, is we're in Smart Scout and we're going into the brands tab, and we're setting a very basic filter criteria of this. So minimum average selling price of $9, average number of sellers of at least 2, so that we're not getting private labels or exclusives, and then a monthly revenue of 20,000 on the smaller side to 250,000 on the upper tier medium. But you can play with these numbers by any means. You can play with categories and target specific categories, and like Brandon said, there's a whole bunch of other tools within Smart Scout, but that's on a surface level, the filters that we're using.
That was good. You had that ready. I also, if you are considering, like we said, we did storefront stalking for a very long time. Smart Scout is also a really good tool. If you are going to sign up, we do have an affiliate code. You just put in Operation AMZ, or there's actually some links floating around on like the YouTube channel. I don't know if you want to drop the link in for that as well. I believe it's 20% off for the first 3 months. So if you are considering using Smart Scout, we'd appreciate it if you use that code. But we do use it actively, and it's a really good software for other things in addition to finding brands. We also, can use it for AI, for listing building, for tons of things like that, depending on the tier that you get for your membership. So Operation AMZ, or Brad's going to throw the affiliate code in there. But also kind of just following up that same exact trend of, the next question here off of Twitter says, is Amazon retail arbitrage dead versus, owning your own brand? I'm also going to throw in there, like, owning your own brand's private label, but like, brand direct wholesale is the next closest thing. I'm never going to sit here and jump to, because like we've been in the game long enough where we understand that every 6 months, Amazon does something that everyone freaks out about, right? And I think that's always going to happen. But the thing is, we did RA for a long time. We did it before we jumped into wholesale. That was both of our roots before we started the wholesale business. And I'm never going to say it's dead, but what I am going to say, it's progressively getting more unsafe. And I think back when we were doing arbitrage, I don't know if you agree on this, Brad, like, it wasn't as strict. There weren't as many issues happening all the time that I saw, at least. And it seemed like you were getting away with more. Would you say so?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's changed in the last couple of years, and especially in the last year. Amazon really wants people moving towards this model of wholesale and brand direct and owning your own brand. So, I think you can make money with it. But I think that if you're looking for a long-term play, you're looking for a sustainable business model, I'd really consider wholesale, and I really consider brand direct. And I think just tonight, like, and just the people that have been on here, it's a lot of like, hey, I used to do arbitrage, but now I'm considering doing this. And I think there's a reason for that, is because Amazon is pushing everyone in a certain direction. And it just happens to be the direction that our business model is aligned with.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a good note to close out on. It's a good point, well said. And we go live every single Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time, same time we're on here. We love answering the questions. We love talking Amazon. So join us next week. Any last words?
No, that's it. We'll see you next week. Thanks for all the questions, and appreciate you guys checking out the live and all of our content.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next week.
Later.